Hello, my name's Cade Wilson, and the title of my project is Security and Ethical Implications of Blockchain in Regards to Text Mining. So, to start off with an introduction here, describing what blockchain really is, it is a new system of networks which has been on the rise for the last 10-ish years. And it is a decentralized ledger of transactions, which just means it's kind of a big database that's unable to be changed, and it stores the different transactions of data or money, whatever it may be, on this ledger. And so the biggest thing in recent times with blockchain is that it has applications beyond just cryptocurrency, as we've seen it being primarily used as, and it has relevance in very different industries for transparency and security purposes. Particularly things like supply chain and healthcare, where data is very sensitive, or it's very important for it to be transparent to make sure you're buying, the correct parts from the correct supplier. So the characteristics of blockchain, first of all, the people who are primarily active with it, be that developers or users, those communities are very hyper online, which means that they are housed almost exclusively online. There's not a lot of physical or in-person interaction with blockchain communities. And this makes it really good for data collection because that means all of that data is out there online somewhere for us to grab. It's also a very divisive topic with the idea of centralization or decentralization, especially in the business context, because it can be very expensive and complex to implement these new systems that haven't necessarily been proven yet in a business context, although they are promising. Also, for the less business side and the consumer facing side, blockchain is very unapproachable and technically complex for those from the outside looking in. And this can be seen with the different recent boom and bust cycles with cryptocurrency that really impacts investor confidence and consumer confidence in general in terms of people's willingness to be using this technology. So then the research goals for this project were to have a balanced perspective and to focus on textual analysis. And the research question at hand was, what does the public sentiment across these platforms look like? So the kind of key issues or key stakeholders that this was surrounding was the idea of data security and sovereignty, which means that it's completely under your control and it's very secure under your control. The environment, as there's been a lot of different developments with cryptocurrency in recent years in terms of environmental consciousness and impact. Regulation in terms of things like the SEC and the government itself having a hand in how cryptocurrency and blockchain itself is starting to be implemented into different financial institutions. And then healthcare for data sensitivity, thinking about how things like HIPAA and patient confidentiality could be protected by something like blockchain, as well as finance with the primary usage being cryptocurrency. It's possible to have a decentralized asset that could survive different market shock events. And then supply chain, as we mentioned previously, having that transparency to see that you're buying the correct part from the correct buyer. So then moving into the data that was used, the first source was from News API. And in the top left, that was the absolute raw data that came in. And then the right below it there was it prettified a little bit and put into a data frame. And then it was further cleaned on the right where it was lemmatized and stemmed in order to be analyzed by the models going forward. Then the next set of data came from Reddit. This was gotten or scraped, excuse me, or obtained by using the praw Reddit library. As you can see, the data came in with missing values and different looks and things like that. And then on the right-hand side, we have the missing values scraped and the different characters and things like that removed. And the last source was Medium. This data came in having the title and description below each other, if there was a description present. As you can see, the first one did not have a description, so it was just H2H2, but then there was H2H3. H2 represented the title and H3 represented the description. So I was able to sort those out and match them together, and once again, lematize and stem them for further analysis using the models. So then going into the main findings, or the most important findings at least, the biggest thing was that cryptocurrency was absolutely the most common subject in the text across all of the platforms, which makes sense given that's the primary current application publicly. That's the main use for blockchain, at least right now. And so that goes to show that it has a very strong finance application, going back to those stakeholders mentioned before. And also, it was found that there was a very neutral discourse regarding cryptocurrency across all these platforms as well, which I thought was interesting because I would have expected more divisive conversations given how controversial it's been, especially in recent years with things like rug pulls or just flat out scams happening. And so my theory was kind of that maybe there was some data muddling with, there just being such similar statements between positive and negative comments that it was maybe kind of hard for some of these models to pick that apart. The next finding was that there was very significant cross-platform discrepancies in terms of the wording used in the data gathered. For the news API data, it was very focused on the financial technology side of things, which kind of makes sense because they were probably coming from, or the data was probably coming from a lot of different business articles and things like that, that would be focused more on things that would affect stakeholders outside of just like investors. And this data also had more of a broader focus, meaning that when clustered, both for sentiment and word correlation. There were fewer categories, but they were very distinct from each other and very easy to group. Then for the Reddit data, there was a very common theme of investment and marketing, or the market itself. And this makes sense as we've seen things like Wall Street bets and different cryptocurrency communities kind of being housed or started even on Reddit. So this is a very common place for this online financial conversation to be happening. And Reddit was also found to have very high topic diversity, meaning so clustered with sentiment and word correlation. There was a lot of groups, but they were less distinct. It was hard to kind of pick them apart and find the different themes. Although there was a heavy trend towards investors in the market itself, just general like investing conversations. And for the last source with Medium, there was a very broad focus with this data. There was very few categories that were pretty significant and easy to group. And all of this data was very focused on futurism and looking forward to how blockchain could be applied to different applications than investing or finance itself. So that was kind of interesting, given that Medium is more of an academic source, it had less of a finance focus. And so, kind of the overarching finding was that tech is just the underlying focus among a lot of this text data. Um, and this makes sense because a lot of the community engagement in these online communities surrounding blockchain is encouraged because it's the open source nature of blockchain. It gives everyone a voice in these communities. So, everyone who is active as an investor or a whatever role they may have in a cryptocurrency project or a blockchain project is heavily involved. And so, in summary, overall, the text data had neutral sentiment across all three platforms, although I think this has to do with a lot of the messages being very similar in terms of the way we would use very common words like cryptocurrency and different cryptocurrency names and things like that. So, I'd be interested to do more filtering and see what could come of that. There was also a very significant focus on tech and cryptocurrency, given technology. A lot of the conversations online is going towards development because of the open source nature of blockchain, and then for cryptocurrency, that's the primary application of it right now. So both of these made sense as well. And then the most interesting finding was finding that there was platform specific text themes. So looking at news, Reddit, and Medium, seeing how they had different, conversations being had, how that varied platform to platform was interesting. So there could be some further work with data dynamics there, perhaps like maybe how data dissemination happens on these different platforms. And so I think this overall information could be helpful for developers of blockchain, investors in cryptocurrency, and then users or potential users of cryptocurrency or blockchain. Um, Given the neutral sentiment of everything and how tech focused it was, I think it's important to remember that this is a developing area of technology in terms of adoption and regulation and just general usage. So more understanding is definitely needed, and this was shown through that focus of tech in the text data. So thank you very much.